This happened a few years back. The age is still kind of fuzzy in my mind, but I'll try to keep the story as clear as possible. I was young, maybe 8 or 10. I was left at home a lot because I had a single mother and she worked a lot of graveyard shifts. She went out of her way to try and make sure I was safe as possible though. We couldn't afford a babysitter, so I had to take care of myself in a way. She set a lot of strict rules for when she was away though. I should always come in, lock all the doors and windows, have something to eat, and then start my homework before tidying the dishes. Once I completed the list, I could basically do whatever I want in the house. One day, I came in exhausted after school. I dragged myself into the house and threw all my stuff down, and I was planning to lie down for just a few minutes. I opened my eyes to realize that it was now dark outside. I had fallen asleep for what appeared to be hours. I barely opened my eyes when I heard a commotion in the kitchen. Oh no, Mom must be home, and maybe she's pissed because I left the dishes in the sink. I slightly started to panic. My mom never hit me, but I hated disappointing her because I know how hard she tried. She walked up slowly to my room door, panting heavily. I heard the door slowly creaking open as my mother stood just outside it, not saying a word. Damn, this must be really bad, because when she gets silent, that's when I know I really messed up. I nervously said, "Sorry for the mess, Mom. I'm going to clean it up right now." She walked away slowly without uttering a word, with heavy footsteps down to her room. As she reached her room, I heard her door open and then slam shut. After a few minutes, I was done with the dishes, and I was about to start my homework when I got a text from my mom reminding me to wash up the dishes. I said I just did it and asked if she was still mad at me. She seemed confused and asked why would I say that. I reminded her of the way that she slammed the door earlier. Then she said, "Get out of the house, now." I started apologizing a lot because I thought maybe I made her really upset. I kept apologizing, but then she said, "Mike, I haven't left work. Please get out of the house now." My eyes widened and a cold shiver ran down my spine. I heard heavy footsteps behind me and turned slowly to reveal the lady that was in my mom's room. She was at the edge of the hall, just where the light stopped at her neck. She kept mumbling something, but I couldn't really hear it. I asked her to please leave, as stern as I could. Then she got louder, repeating, must get away, not safe." I got freaked out, and I was about to leave the house when she lunged at me. Now, in the light, I could see this frail, old-looking lady with wild black and grey hair. She grabbed onto my shirt and just kept repeating that she had to get away. Then she paused and was looking around frantically. Might have been the longest 3 seconds of my life. My heart was pounding, looking at the empty eyes of the strange lady. She was staring as if something was crawling up her hands. Then she just started screaming and scratching at her face vigorously. I heard the police at the front door and sprinted outside to them. I told them the lady was inside and they went to apprehend her. She was wild, kicking and screaming, saying that they're coming to get me. They're coming to take her back. At first I thought she meant the police or something, but the way that she reacted, it was clear that she believed that there was something much worse after her. They evaluated her, and of course she was mentally unstable. The police later told me that she most likely came in through an unlocked door in the back, the one I would usually enter through. That's when it hit me. In my exhaustion, I came in and went straight to bed. All I did was push up the door without turning the lock. My mom was a very confusing mix of angry and relieved that day. When I was younger, I got mixed in with a bad crowd. I was more of a soft kid growing up, partially because I grew up mostly with my mother. My father had ties to a gang and was shot and killed during a shootout one day. My father had generated a lot of loyalty from some of the old gang members, and they offered some protection to me and my family. My mom wasn't all too excited about it though. She didn't want anything to do with my father's old business, and even though we were poor, she refused any money from them. Looking back now, I understand her thinking, because she didn't want me suffering by association the way our family used to. I didn't get close to any of them, though I would sometimes run into them in the neighborhood. I remember one in particular. We'll call him Bobby. Bobby noticed I was soft, and seemed kinda concerned that I'd be picked on if I didn't stand up for myself. He was a big brother I never really got. In a way, he helped raise me for a lot of my childhood. He seemed different from a lot of the other guys that he would hang out with. Every time I saw him, he was reading a different book, and we would talk about how the world works. As a kid, I don't think I really understood a lot of it, but I always liked listening. He would always try to put it in simple terms, usually using cartoons to symbolize the world or candy to symbolize money. One day, I was hanging out with Bobby at his house. My mom never liked me hanging out with him, but his friends seemed so cool. They always had the latest phones, girls flocking around them, and seemed to command respect wherever they went. I know now that it was for the wrong reasons, but at the time, I couldn't help but admire them. We were all watching TV, and then a bunch of cars pulled up. They told me to get into the back and be quiet. I asked why, and for the first time, I heard panic in Bobby's voice. The place was tense, and I heard a knock at the door. Then there was silence, and the next thing I heard was the sound of the door being kicked in and guns being fired. It almost didn't seem real at the time. Bobby ran into the room I was in and held my head down. I noticed there was blood running down his arm. I moved to ask if he was okay, but he pushed me down behind the barricade, and he said, "Stay down until I tell you." There was a sound of heavy footsteps running in the direction of the door. They tried kicking it in, but Bobby had pushed the dresser behind it, so it was only part of it that broke in. I made eye contact with one of the guys, and the eye was quickly replaced with the barrel of a gun pointed directly at me. I saw my short life flash before my eyes, and I screamed Bobby's name for help. Just then, there was a sound of sirens coming down the street, and the men ran back to their cars. As they drove off, the police cars were right behind them, chasing them down the street. Bobby took me through the back door and borrowed a car from someone around the road. I was in the car with my hands still shaking and my stomach in knots. That day, Bobby told me I can't come to the house anymore. It's way too dangerous. He left me with one of his favorite books, The 48 Laws of Power. I still reread it to this day, and I understood that if I wasn't tough like the others, I have to be smart, like Bobby. That was the last time I got to see Bobby before his funeral. According to the reports, he was gunned down in a drive-by, walking away from his favorite bookstore in a setup. I heard that he was trying to leave the gang from someone in the community. R.I.P. Bobby. Thank you for everything. This happened a few years ago, but to be honest, it still sends shivers down my spine to this day. I just came home from a vacation with some friends. I didn't get a house sitter or anyone to check on the house while I was gone. I was a bit antisocial, and I didn't know or trust my neighbors enough. It was only going to be a few days, so I did the old leave a light on in the house trick, hoping that it would make people think someone was still home. When I arrived, I was pretty tired because the vacation was kind of hectic. On top of that, I need time away from people to recharge, so this has taken a lot out of me. I hopped in the shower almost immediately to have some warm water relax me. The strange thing is, I couldn't find the robe I would usually use after a shower. With everything else going on, I figured maybe I put it in the dirty clothes pile before I left. It was weird, but I just grabbed a towel and dried off. After drying off, I went to watch TV and unconsciously grabbed for the remote in the place that I thought I left it. It was on the TV stand instead of my coffee table. Things being misplaced in my house stands out to me a lot because 1, I live alone, and 2, out of convenience, I end up leaving things at about the same place almost every time. So it was weird, but not enough to raise any real alarm. I watched some TV and started getting hungry, so I decided to make some food. I reached for the knife, and again, it's missing. This was starting to worry me. The remote and the robe being out of place, I could justify. But that knife? I always put that knife back. I started searching the place for things that were missing or moved. Some food had gone missing too, but nothing of huge value. I went upstairs and locked my room door to call one of my friends to come over since I wasn't really feeling too safe. I went into my room and everything was a mess. It looked like a tornado flew through and I couldn't deny it anymore. Someone was in my house. My friend Orion just answered when I tripped over something on the floor and I dropped my phone. The dim light from my phone highlighted something under the bed. It was a person. They had their backs turned to me in the fetal position and appeared completely still. I swallowed my scream and stumbled back to my feet. Orion called out for me, but I just picked up my phone and then immediately left the house. I hung up on Orion and went over to my neighbor's house to ask if I could stay there for a few minutes. They were confused, of course, But I assumed that they saw the concern on my face and agreed. I called the police, then explained everything to my neighbors as well. In 30 minutes, I look out of my neighbor's window to my house to see an old, skinny-looking man being taken out. Police would later tell me that the homeless man broke in and had been living there for some time. When I got back home, it's assumed that the man hid under the bed to avoid being seen. With him, my favorite knife, the longest and sharpest of them all. It was never determined what the true intentions of the man were, but with the knife in his hands and trying to conceal his presence, it's safe to assume that they weren't good. From that day on, my neighbors and I have grown closer, and I even house sat for them before, but that's a story for another time.